Good evening, wanderer of the quiet hours. Settle into your blankets, let the weight of the day melt from your shoulders, and step once more into the temple of Nyx. Before we begin tonight's tale, tell me in the comments where in the world are you listening from, and subscribe to hear more such stories. This story is a creative retelling inspired by biblical and mythical themes. It is not a literal or doctrinal account, but a work of fantasy. Listener discretion is advised, and please remember that this is just a story. Prologue. In a silent cavern of the abyss, upon a throne carved from eternal night, I sit and remember. Around me, the infernal city lies quiet for now, its iron towers casting long shadows by the glow of brimstone fires. My subjects, the fallen and the damned, find what rest they can in this sleepless realm. It is in these still moments, when the endless schemes and struggles pause, that my thoughts drift inexorably to the past. Sometimes a distant wail echoes through these halls, a lost soul crying out from the depths, but I pay it no heed. Instead, I let the phantom sound of long-ago hymns fill my mind, the ghostly memory of heaven's choir replacing hell's lament. Such contrasts define my existence now, sorrow threaded with the reminiscence of splendor. If you have come to hear my story, then sit and listen well. It is not a tale I share lightly, but tonight, in the hush of hell's twilight, I find myself willing to speak of what came before, of a time when I was not the lord of this realm, but a prince among angels basking in the radiance of heaven. Close your eyes and picture it, mortal, the realm of light where I once dwelled, and the path of pride and sorrow that led me here. Listen, and know the truth behind the fall of Lucifer, the morning star. Chapter 1. The Morning Star. I remember the dawn of time. I remember when the cosmos was new, when the first light ever to shine bathed creation in a gentle gold. In those ancient days, I was called Lucifer, which means light bringer. True to my name, I glowed with the radiance bestowed upon me by the Creator. My wings were vast and shimmering, reflecting the celestial morning like mirrors of the soul. In heaven's great hierarchy of angels, I stood among the highest. Some even said I was the most brilliant and beautiful of all the angelic host. Our home was the Empyrean heaven, a realm of pure light and harmony. Imagine endless skies, not blue but a radiant ivory gold, alive with the song of cherubim and seraphim. Palaces of pearl and crystal floated amid gardens of eternal bloom. Rivers of light flowed without source or mouth, their gentle currents carrying the laughter of the blessed. And at the very center of it all was the throne of the eternal order, a throne of unimaginable majesty, surrounded by a chorus of uncountable angels singing in eternal praise. In that shining realm I had my duties. I was a guardian of the throne and a herald of the morning. When the Creator spoke, it was I who carried the first rays of His will across the heavenly expanse. In the grand assemblies of angels, I stood at the forefront, my voice among the lead in songs, glorifying the source of all light. Such was my purpose, to magnify the glory of the eternal order, and to serve in joy and loyalty. And truly, for countless ages beyond mortal reckoning, I did so with pure devotion. I was not alone in honor. Beside me stood my brethren, the other archangels, each unique in splendor. At my right hand often stood Michael, the protector, stalwart and faithful, his presence like a pillar of truth. Gabriel was there as well, a gentle voice who carried the Creator's messages far and wide. And Raphael, a healer and friend, whose laughter could warm even the vast halls of heaven. We were a family of light, born of the Creator's breath, united in purpose and love, for our Maker and for each other. Life in heaven was rich with meaningful tasks and joys. We did more than sing praises, though songs were the soul of our existence. Some of us cultivated vast gardens of lilies that never withered, painting the celestial fields with living color. Others crafted luminaries, setting stars and galaxies in their courses under the Creator's guidance. I myself often flew at the forefront of such works, heralding the dawn of new creations with my presence. The first woman reaction, no matter how small, felt infused with holy significance, and when our work was done, we gathered in fellowship, sharing wisdom and delight in each other's company. There was, in truth, no concept of boredom or want, only the endless fulfillment of serving and creating in harmony. In those days I cherished the light that lived within me. I delighted in the brilliance that the Creator had woven into my being. I would soar through the heavenly realms on wings of glory, stirring the very air into a luminous dawn whenever I passed. Other angels looked up to me, and I, in turn, guided them in hymns and celebration. Their admiration was pure, and I accepted it with humility, or so I believed at the time. If ever I felt a flicker of pride, I dismissed it as gratitude for the Creator's gifts. For who was I but a reflection of His light? So long as I remembered that truth, all was well. One memory from those early eons often returns to me in vivid detail. I recall standing upon the crystal sea, a vast expanse like a mirror at the foot of the throne. Under my feet, the glassy surface rippled with gentle light. Above, the heavens were alive with the sound of angelic choirs. In that moment, as dawn in heaven broke anew, for dawn was not a time but a state of worship, I raised my voice in a solo song of praise. My voice rang out clear and strong, carrying love and reverence in every note. The chorus of millions joined in harmony, a symphony so sweet that stars would be born from its echoes. And as the song reached its peak, the Creator's own light shone brighter, a warm acknowledgement of our devotion. Joy filled me, radiant and complete. We basked in the Creator's delight, and I felt purpose in every fiber of my being. As the final note faded into a blissful silence, I opened my eyes to find the host of heaven rejoicing. Thousands of angels laughed and embraced one another in the afterglow of our song. I saw Michael nearby, sheathing his gleaming sword, for even he laid aside arms during worship, his face alight with awe. He approached and clapped me on the back with brotherly pride. "Lucifer, that was magnificent," he exclaimed. "Your voice could make the stars dance." I smiled and inclined my head. "It was the Creator's light in me that sang," I replied sincerely. Michael chuckled. "The first woman humble, brother. Still, he gave you quite a gift, and you use it well." Others came with their kind words. Sariel, who tended the gardens, twirled in excitement as she praised the melody. A trio of minor angels shyly approached, just to touch my hand and thank me for elevating their hearts. I welcomed each with gentle courtesy, my heart swelling with contentment. To bring such joy to my family of light was a reward in itself. In that shining reflection on the crystal sea, I caught a glimpse of myself, a tall, resplendent figure bathed in ethereal glow. My face, carved with angelic grace, bore the soft smile of one utterly at peace, eyes bright like the morning star itself, hair flowing with light, and a crown of auroras dancing above my brow. All these were the gifts I had been given. In that fleeting gaze I felt an overwhelming gratitude, but something else stirred faintly as well, a delicate thrill at my own brilliance. It was a feeling so subtle I barely recognized it. If I had known then what seed was planted in that moment of self-awareness, perhaps I would have looked away, but I did not. I held that image for a breath longer than I should have, quietly treasuring the sight of my own form crowned in light. Yet even then it was not malice or open vanity that touched me. Not yet. I remained steadfast in my love for the Creator and for the light that was His. If a touch of pride knocked at the door of my heart, I assured myself it was only pride in the glory of heaven and the Creator's work. After all, were we not the children of the eternal order's thought, each of us a marvel of His design? In loving my own design, I told myself I only loved Him more. So I continued, untroubled, through the timeless ages of bliss. And in truth, at that time, nothing else existed for me beyond our radiant service. The very concept of rebellion or sorrow was as foreign as a shadow in perpetual daylight. We were innocent in our splendor, blissfully unaware of any life apart from the harmony we knew. Had anyone suggested that an angel might one day fall from grace, we would not have understood the words. Such a tragedy was unthinkable, especially for one so favored by the light as I. Yet unseen in the fabric of that perfection, a small crease was forming. The faintest whisper of something more, of I instead of thou, began to stir. Destiny, inexorable and stern, was quietly at work, weaving a future none of us could have anticipated. In the midst of absolute paradise, the first questions were beginning to form in my heart, as gently and secretly as cracks forming beneath smooth glass. Chapter 2. Seeds of Rebellion. It began innocently enough, as changes often do. In those days, the Creator would sometimes speak to us individually, a gentle word in our minds, a radiance of love directed especially to one soul. Each angel treasured these moments of direct communion with the eternal order.
I certainly did.
When his voice came to me, it was like standing in the heart of a sunrise, utterly warming and illuminating. One such moment remains clear. The Creator praised me. He praised my song, the morning hymn I led with such devotion. He said it was beautiful, that I was beautiful, not in vanity, but as one of His most splendid creations. Those words, most splendid, rang in the core of my being. I was filled with elation to be so beloved and valued. All I desired was to please Him further. But as the praise echoed within me, I found myself pondering its significance. Most splendid. The phrase was like a sweet nectar that I had never tasted before. Gratitude swelled in me, but alongside it, a subtle hunger awoke. I wished to hear such praise again, perhaps even more fervently. I began to wonder, was there a limit to my excellence? Could I, by my own will and effort, become even more glorious to earn yet greater regard? The thought was not overtly rebellious. It felt like a desire to excel, to shine brighter for Him. Yet beneath that noble intent, my focus had shifted inward, ever so slightly, from His glory to my own role in it. In gatherings of the host, I started to pay more attention to how others looked at me. I noticed the admiration in their eyes, the trust and affection. Where once I had only thought of how we all together gazed toward the Creator, now I occasionally caught myself basking in how they gazed at me. The shift was as quiet as the turning of a single leaf in a vast forest, nearly imperceptible, but present. If any of my brothers suspected a change in me, they did not note of it then. Why would they? I still performed my duties flawlessly. The morning hymns soared ever more beautifully under my guidance. The luminous festivals, where we celebrated the eternal order's wonders, were more splendid than ever, and I was often at the center, coordinating the music of the sphere. Heaven rejoiced, and I rejoiced with it, yet now also for the sake of the admiration it earned me. There was a day when Raphael, with his ever-kind smile, approached me after a grand chorus. He clapped a hand on my shoulder in camaraderie and said, "Brother Lucifer, Your leadership brings such unity to our voices. We all look to you, you know. You inspire us." He meant it innocently, a heartfelt compliment from a friend. I smiled and accepted his words graciously, but inside my heart danced. I inspired them. They looked to me. These were things I had not dwelt on before, but now I did. I allowed myself to enjoy it. Then came the day when the balance of eternity shifted. A new command rang out from the throne, calling every angel, great and small, to gather in the high court of heaven. It was unusual, for such summons had been issued only for the grandest of revelations. A sense of expectancy vibrated through the celestial realm. I remember exchanging curious glances with Michael as we flew side by side toward the central golden plain before the throne. All about us, wings of every hue and size filled the skies as the heavenly host assembled. From the lowliest angelic guardians to the mightiest seraphim, all came to hear the Creator's words. We stood in luminous ranks that stretched beyond sight. The eternal order's presence loomed above us on his towering throne of light, and a sacred hush fell. When the Creator spoke, his voice was like a cosmic bell, each word sending ripples of power and love through creation. He revealed to us his new design, a realm beyond our own, a physical universe unfolding in time and space. He painted visions in our minds of swirling galaxies, newborn stars igniting in the void, and among them a particular jewel, a world teeming with life. This world, he said, would be called Earth, a cradle for a new form of creation, made in his own image. A ripple of astonishment and wonder passed through the host. Never before had something wholly new been made since our own beginning. Now an entire cosmos was born out of his imagination, and at its heart, this earth, with mortal beings, named human. They would be lesser in power than us, bound by flesh and mortality, and yet they were to bear the Creator's image in their souls. They were to have the capacity for reason, creativity, and most strikingly, the freedom to choose their path, to love or to turn away. It was a gift even we angels did not fully possess in the same way, for we had known only the love of him, without contrary. In the midst of his speech, the Creator unveiled a vision before us, the image of a man, the first of these humans, formed from the dust of earth, but brought to life by his breath. This, the first man, as he named him, stood in the vision as a humble figure, unclothed yet unashamed, his eyes filled with innocence and curiosity. I remember leaning forward to observe this creature more closely. He was unlike any being we had seen. There was a certain beauty in his simplicity, flesh woven with sinew, a heartbeat echoing faintly in his chest, and in his gaze a reflection of the divine image, mortal yet bearing a spark of the Creator's light in his soul. And beside the first man stood a second form, a woman, the first woman, gentle and graceful, the pair of them, the progenitors of a new realm of life. A ripple of wonder passed among the host at the sight of these two small, fragile beings, destined to walk the earth. Then came a command that truly surprised us. The eternal order declared that we, the angels, would watch over and guide these human children. We were to serve as their protectors and messengers. In essence, though we stood above them in strength and knowledge, we were to humble ourselves in care for these fragile, ensouled beings. For in his eyes they were as precious as we, perhaps even more so, some whispered. As a sign of our willingness, the Creator bid us to honor his image within the first human as if we were honoring him, to bow not in worship of the mortal, but in respect to the divine spark placed in this new creation. At this, a hush deeper than silence fell. bow to a mortal, serve these new lesser beings. I heard a few astonished murmurs in the ranks. For an eternal moment I myself did not move. A storm of conflicting emotions surged through me. It felt as though the light in me flickered. On one hand, I remembered all too well that I existed to serve the eternal order's will. On the other, I felt a hot kernel of indignation igniting. Why should the radiant children of heaven stoop to these clay-born lies? We who were made of pure light, were we now to be caretakers for creatures of dust? Around me, my brethren began to obey. Out of the corner of my eye I saw Michael kneel without hesitation, his face serene and loyal. One by one, wings lowered and heads bowed in reverence toward the vision of the first human that the Creator had revealed. I stood still a heartbeat longer, my hands clenched at my sides. Inside, my spirit cried out in refusal, even as I fought to master it. A part of me could not accept this order, but I felt Michael's gaze from where he knelt, and Gabriel's concerned glance from the other side. My hesitation was noticed. With a strained breath, I forced myself down to one knee, wings fanning the shining air reluctant. Outwardly, I took the posture of obedience alongside my brothers and sisters. In my heart, however, a seed of revolt was firmly planted. When at last we were dismissed, I fled the gathering as quickly as decorum allowed. My mind was aflame with turmoil. I flew to a quiet colonnade of alabaster at the edge of heaven's high gardens, trying to quell the storm inside. How could the eternal order ask this of us? Of me? Did he not cherish us, the firstborn of his creation? Why then elevate these mortals, these earthy beings, to a station that even angels must bow towards? As I stood lost in these dark musings, I sensed a presence approach. It was Azazel, one of the esteemed seraphim, known for his keen mind and bold spirit. He and I had often labored together on grand celestial projects, shaping the paths of starlight and guiding newborn suns into their courses. He was a friend, and I realized, perhaps the first to seek me out after what had transpired. "Lucifer," Azazel said softly, ensuring no others were near, "your heart is troubled." I glanced at him, and for a moment I considered feigning calm, but Azazel's eyes were filled with a knowing sympathy. He too had knelt, only with great reluctance. I had seen the tension in his face. There was no need for pretense between us. "Troubled? Yes, you saw what happened," I replied, my voice low yet quivering with barely restrained emotion. "Tell me, Azazel, did it not strike you as unjust? We who were born of pure light, now commanded to revere and serve those made of dust and clay?" Azazel exhaled relief, flickering in his expression at hearing his own feelings spoken aloud. "It did, my friend," he admitted. "I confess, I cannot comprehend it. They are so new, so primitive compared to us. To guide them, yes, I understand it, that to bow," he shook his head slowly. "Still, who are we to question the eternal order's will? He is our creator. His wisdom is beyond ours." I paced a few steps along the colonnade, the arches casting patterned shadows over my wings. "Of course it is beyond ours," I agreed. And yet, I cannot quiet this feeling that something is amiss. Have we suddenly become less in his eyes, or is this a test of our obedience? If it is a test, it wounds me that he would think we need testing in our loyalty. Azazel was quiet for a moment, golden eyes studying me. "I know you love him deeply," he said carefully. "We all do. Perhaps there are things we do not yet see. Maybe these mortals, in time, will rise to greatness that even we can admire. The eternal order has a grand design. His attempt at reason only partly soothed the ache in my heart. I leaned against a pillar, wings drooping. Perhaps you are right, Azazel, but the way he spoke, as if these humans were to be cherished above us. It hurt me. I realized as I spoke that this was the core of my pain. A feeling of being diminished. Never before had I felt anything less than wholly loved and valued by the Creator. Now for the first time I felt a sting of possible rejection, or at least displacement. Azazel stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You are not alone in these doubts, Lucifer," he whispered. I saw Belial after the assembly. His face was dark with anger. And Semjaza too, and others whose names you would know. We spoke briefly, only in passing. There is unrest in more hearts than just yours. Hearing this was both startling and strangely comforting. It meant my own misgivings were not a unique flaw in me. Other angels, honorable and true until now, had felt the same confusion, the same wound to their pride. I would speak with them, I said, almost involuntarily, as the thought took shape. Not to subvert the eternal order's will, I added quickly, but to understand, to see if perhaps together we might petition for clarity or reconsideration. Azazel's expression was cautious, yet he nodded. "If it eases your spirit, then speak to them, but carefully, my friend. Questioning the eternal order's will, it treads a fine line." He looked around at the empty garden, ensuring no eavesdroppers, then continued in an undertone, "We must not act in haste. For now let us trust that in time the eternal order will show us why this is right." I forced a smile and clasped Azazel's arm, gratefully. "Thank you. Your counsel is sound. I will be patient." Inside, however, my thoughts churned on. Though Azazel meant well, the idea of simply waiting and accepting this new order of things felt unbearable. I could not let go of the notion that perhaps a mistake had been made, or worse, that the eternal order, was placing us second in his heart. That idea cut deeper than any blade of light ever could. Before Azazel departed, he squeezed my shoulder once more. His final words to me that day were, "Hold fast to the light within you, Lucifer." I nodded, but said nothing. When I was alone, I gazed out at the expanse of heaven. In the distance, 1,000,000 angels went about their blissful tasks, tending gardens of light, crafting auroras, and playing harps that glowed with each note. All was ostensibly as it had always been. Yet for me, everything had changed in the wake of the eternal order's decree. I felt a fissure in the perfect world I had known. No one had fallen. No one had defied the Creator outright. Not yet. But as I stood there, I realized with a chill that in my heart I had already stepped onto a new path. I questioned the eternal order's will. However gently or privately, I had entertained the thought that the eternal order might be wrong. It frightened and thrilled me at once to acknowledge this. I was not sure where this path would lead, only that I could not turn back my thoughts now. The seeds of rebellion had been planted, watered by pride and pain. In the days to come, those seeds would quietly sprout in the shadows of heaven as like-minded angels came together in search of understanding or validation. We did not know it, but we were nurturing a storm that soon would break upon the very gates of paradise. Chapter 3 Whispers in the Celestial Halls. In the wake of the great assembly, a strange quiet settled over heaven. Outwardly, the routines of paradise continued. Choirs sang, angels tended to the newborn stars, and praises still flowed like sweet wine. But underneath that harmony, an undercurrent of uncertainty moved. Here and there I caught furtive looks between certain angels, signs that I was not alone in my unease. We did not speak openly, not yet, but a silent kinship grew among those who harbored private doubt. It was time. I began to reach out carefully to those Azazel had mentioned, and a few others I trusted. Late in the gentle dim of what passed for evening in heaven, for though no night falls, there were ebbing cycles of activity, I walked through the silver groves to a secluded pavilion, far from the central courts. There beneath an archway of living light, I met with Belial. He was a cherub of great artistry, his mind sharp, and I knew him to be discontent since the decree. Belial greeted me with a troubled smile. He sensed why I had come. "Lucifer," he began, keeping his voice low, "this is about them, isn't it?" "The humans." I gave a slight nod. Belial's wings fluttered with agitation. "I cannot pretend I am at peace with it. I craft wonders of beauty in the firmament, and now I am to divert my attention to guarding creatures who may not even appreciate our guidance." "You speak my thoughts plainly, old friend," I responded, placing a hand on his arm. "We will not be the first or last to feel this way. I plan to gather a few of us, discreetly, to discuss these matters. Not to defy the Creator outright," I added quickly, "but to seek understanding, and perhaps an appeal if we find consensus." Belial agreed readily, relief evident that someone was taking initiative. Over the next span of time, for in heaven we marked time not by sun or moon but by events and songs, I quietly assembled a small circle. We met in hidden glades and silent courtyards beyond the usual paths of angels at work. Present were Azazel and Belial, as well as Semjaza, a leader of the Watcher Angels who oversaw distant worlds. Leviathan, a mighty seraph whose domain was the seas of crystal, and a handful of others drawn by friendship or similar disquiet. Our secret gatherings were tense but liberating. By unspoken agreement, I often found myself taking the lead, voicing what the others felt. In one such meeting, under the soft luminescence of a willow-like tree whose leaves chimed with each movement, the debate began. "We all know why we are here," I said quietly, as the circle of angels looked to me. "Our hearts are heavy with questions about the Creator's new decree. I, for one, cannot banish the feeling that we and all our labors have been slighted." Semjaza, arms folded, "To be guardians I can accept," he mused, "but to treat them almost as our equals, so soon. They have yet to prove themselves worthy of such regard." "Exactly," Belial interjected. "What have humans done? They are newly made, naive as children, yet the eternal order places such hope in them that he commands us to bow in respect. Perhaps he wishes to teach us humility," came a softer voice. It was Ariel, a principality known for her wisdom, who until now had listened in silence. "We assume it is about the human's worth. It might be about refining our own virtue." A few considered her point, but Azazel shook his head. "Humility we have never lacked, Ariel. We have always known all glory flows from him. This, however, this feels different. It feels as if we are being replaced." At that, Leviathan, fiery-eyed, snapped, "I cannot abide the idea that these mortals could replace us in his favor. We, who have served since the dawn. It is as though a father told his eldest children to yield their birthright to a younger, unproven child." A murmur of assent passed through the group. I saw Ariel's expression. It was troubled, but she too fell quiet. Her attempt to justify the decree could not stand against the rising resentment. "What would you have us do, Lucifer?" Semjaza asked, all eyes returning to me. "We cannot disobey a direct order of the eternal order," not without consequence unthinkable. I hesitated, the first woman in my growing boldness. To speak openly of defiance was a line I was not yet prepared to cross. We will not act in defiance, I answered slowly. Not yet. I propose first that we petition the eternal order. We present our feelings respectfully. Perhaps in his goodness he will reconsider, or at least explain more fully the purpose behind this command. Some nodded at this prudent approach, others looked less satisfied. And if he does not relent, Leviathan growled softly, if his answer is simply that we must obey without understanding, are we prepared to accept that? A silence fell. My heart thudded. I knew what I felt. I knew that I could not simply let this go, but to say so was to flirt with outright rebellion. All faces around the circle mirrored the inner conflict that I felt. It was Azazel who finally spoke into the hush, his voice calm but deliberate. If it comes to that, perhaps we must be prepared to stand firm in our convictions. An electric tension ran through us at his words. In the mind of an angel, the mere thought of refusing the Creator's will was staggering, like contemplating the sun ceasing to shine. Yet here we were, contemplating it. Stand firm, Belial echoed, almost tasting the idea. Against the eternal order's decree. I pray it does not come to that, I interjected, holding up a hand, which is why our first step must be a humble petition. Let us not speak of refusal yet. We seek understanding, and a voice, nothing more. The first woman, as I said it, part of me already doubted the eternal order would change his plan for us. After all, his word was eternal and final. Or so we had always believed, but I had to try to hope that he might hear us out, for the alternative was too dire to yet name. Thus, over several secret councils, we resolved on a course. We would seek an audience with the eternal order. As one of the most honored archangels, I took it upon myself to be the voice for our petition. We agreed this was the prudent path, a way to air our grievances without outright rebellion. Still, as our meeting dispersed that day, I could sense the anxiety and determination in equal measure among my compatriots. In parting, Azazel clasped my hand. "We stand with you, Lucifer," he assured me. Belial and Semjaza each offered a solemn nod. Our number was small yet significant, and quietly growing as whispers passed to a few more sympathetic ears. We knew we must be careful. If word of our descent reached those utterly loyal to heaven's decree, they would intervene. So we moved in shadows, ironically forging a rebellion in a land of eternal light. My heart was conflicted, but resolute. I felt a sense of destiny, as though I were meant to lead this cause. I told myself it was for the sake of all angels' honor, not merely my own wounded pride. Yet, in the deepest recess of my soul, a voice whispered that it was indeed my pride that had taken the reins. I chose not to listen to that inner warning. Instead, I steeled myself for what was to come. Soon, I would stand before the throne once more, not as the obedient morning star of old, but as an advocate for the rights and dignity of the firstborn of heaven. It felt righteous at the time, even noble. In that conviction, the fate of all we knew would soon be sealed. Chapter 4. Audience with the Eternal Order. Gaining a private audience with the Eternal Order was not a simple matter, even for me. In heaven's order, one did not just stroll into the presence of the Creator at whim, yet my status as the morning star granted me certain liberties. At the appointed time I approached the inner sanctum, a vast hall of prismatic light leading to the throne. My heart pounded like never before. Though I had stood in that holy presence countless times, this time was different. This time I bore a contention in my heart. 2 mighty cherubim, their 4 faces serene and wings folded in reverence, flanked the entrance. They regarded me kindly as I approached, unaware of my true purpose. They stepped aside, and the doors of living light parted to admit me into the throne hall. I walked forward, past the ranks of archangels who attended the throne. I caught sight of Michael among them, his gaze sharpening with concern as he recognized my unusual solemnity. Gabriel stood on the other side, a scroll in his hands, pausing as I passed. Whispers flitted in my wake. Why had I come alone? What urgent matter drove me? At last I stood at the foot of the throne. I knelt, bowing my head low, as was proper. The radiance before me was blinding and beautiful. The eternal order's presence was like an encompassing love, normally so comforting. Yet at that moment, I felt only the gulf between us. I sensed the attention of the Eternal One focus on me, and he spoke my name, his voice echoing gently. Lucifer, my child, rise and speak. Tentatively, I lifted my eyes. Though the Creator's form was too glorious for any but the highest seraphim to gaze upon directly, I felt his regard as warmth and light around me. In the hush, I could faintly hear the flutter of seraphim wings circling high above and the crackling aura of glory that wreathed the throne. The floor under my knees appeared as polished sapphire, reflecting the light in crystalline pattern. Emerald and amber hues spiraled around the Eternal Order's seat, like a perpetual rainbow encircling him in covenantal promise. The 4 great seraphim, who forever attend his presence, hovered quietly at the corners of the throne, their forms a blaze of eyes and wings, gazing into the ineffable light. The first woman they seemed to hold their breath as the Eternal Order addressed me. Such was the tableau of holiness before which I dared bring my grievance. At that word, pride, I stiffened slightly. He knew. Of course he knew. I fought to keep my expression neutral, but inside indignation flared. It felt as though a veil had been torn away, exposing my raw feelings. The Eternal Order's voice gained a firmer tone. Lucifer, brightest of angels, be wary. Your radiance is my gift to you. Do not let it fuel arrogance. This path of questioning can lead to a fall from the very grace that upholds you. The words rang out, echoing. The term fall hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. A tremor went through me, whether of fear or defiance, I could not tell. The other archangels looked on with alarm now, some stepping forward as if to show solidarity with the Eternal Order. I sensed movement. Michael had taken a step closer, his hand on the hilt of his gleaming sword, not in threat but in concern. My heart thundered. This was turning into a public chastisement. I had come hoping for understanding, perhaps even negotiation. But instead I was being lectured on pride before the court. A hot flush of humiliation and anger coursed through me. My lord, I answered, striving to maintain respect while my voice trembled. I have always acknowledged that all I am comes from you. Never would I deny that. I seek only to preserve the dignity of your firstborn servant, to preserve the rightful order you originally established, where we who came first attend only to you, not to lesser beings. A silence followed. The Eternal Order's radiance dimmed to a deep gold that filled me with dread. When he spoke again, there was unmistakable sadness. I see your heart remains hardened in this, Lucifer. Dignity, you say. You speak of rightful order, but you forget the order is what I decree it to be. If you cannot find humility and love within yourself for your new kin, then you do not truly know me as you once did. I tell you again, beware your pride, lest it devour you. At that, I could no longer hold back the bitterness welling inside me. I raised my head fully, a bold breach of etiquette, and met the brilliant aura of the throne with unflinching eyes. "Is it pride?" I asked, in a hardened voice. "To know our value bestowed by you, you made me the morning star, most radiant of all angels. You yourself declared me so. Was that not your will? Shall I now pretend I am as low as these mortals that crawl upon the earth?" A collective gasp came from those gathered. Never had I spoken to the eternal order in such a tone. I felt Michael's presence suddenly at my side, his gauntlet lightly gripping my arm, a silent plea for restraint. I shook him off, my resolve fueled by 1,000 unvoiced hurts. "We only ask for respect, the eternal order," I continued. The word "the eternal order" laced with both love and wounded anger. "We only ask not to be cast down from the place of honor you gave us at the dawn." Is that so wrong? The response, however, was not what I had secretly yearned for. No softening, no reconsideration. The eternal order's voice thundered now, not in anger alone, but in heartbreak. "If you will not accept the order I establish, then you refuse to be what I made you. Lucifer, I fashioned you to be a bearer of light, but the path you tread leads into shadow. I will not bend my will to placate your pride. The choice is yours. Humble yourself and remain in heaven's grace, or persist in this defiance and know the consequence." His pronouncement felt like a hammer blow. Choice. He was giving me a choice, yet it was no choice at all to my wounded spirit. To submit now would be to crawl back in shame, to abandon the resolve that had brought me this far. A tempest raged within me, love for him, violated by what I perceived as injustice, pride that refused to be extinguished, and fear, yes, fear of what my own anger might unleash. I lowered my head, not in acceptance but in a cold fury barely contained. "Then you leave me no choice, my lord," I said quietly, the formal address almost a mockery in my tone. "If obedience means we must debase ourselves, then perhaps we are no longer fit to be your servants." With that, I rose to my full height. Gasps and cries echoed through the chamber at my audacity. The light of the throne flashed, whether in wrath or sorrow, I could not tell, for I spun on my heel and departed, my robes and wings flaring behind me. As I strode out of the hall, the air itself felt heavy, charged with alarm. Many angels stared in shock or wept openly at what had just transpired. I saw Gabriel with tears on his cheeks, and Raphael with a hand over his heart. Dismay writ plain, but I did not stop. I could not, for my own anguish threatened to consume me if I faltered. Only one followed. As the great doors of light slammed shut behind me, I heard footsteps, Michael's. He called my name, Lucifer, not in command, but in pleading. In the corridor of clouds outside the throne hall, I whirled to face Michael. His face, usually so steadfast, was distraught. We stood alone amidst pillars of glowing alabaster. Distant thunder from the throne's anger reverberated through the floor. "What have you done?" Michael whispered, his voice thick with grief. "Brother, how could it come to this?" I felt a sting at the word brother. We had fought side by side in many undertakings, celebrated countless joys together. I loved him, even then. But that love was at war with my resentment. "I did what I had to," I replied, my tone still hot. "I spoke for all of us who were being cast aside." Michael's eyes flashed. "Cast aside? Lucifer, no one has cast you aside. But yourself, did he not just reaffirm his love for you? For us all? We are not diminished by his love for mankind, unless we choose to diminish ourselves with envy." His words struck a chord of doubt in me. For a heartbeat, I faltered. Was it envy? Truly? Was I simply jealous of humans? The thought tasted bitter. You don't understand, Michael, I said, shaking my head. You heard how he spoke, how he warned me, as though I were some errant child. My concerns were genuine, yet he refused to listen. He would rather see me grovel than admit perhaps this decree was hurtful. Michael stepped forward, reaching out as if to take my hand, but I pulled back. Come back with me, he implored softly. We will all pray for guidance. The eternal order is merciful. If you humble yourself now, all can still be as it was. Please, brother. A pang of longing hit me. For a moment, I yearned to accept Michael's plea, to undo the last hour and be again the beloved morning star with no divide between myself and the rest of heaven. Tears actually pricked my eyes, born of that inner conflict. Michael saw it and pressed on, hope kindling in his expression. It's not too late, Lucifer. Surrender this pride. We all love you. He loves you. Remember, he added, the day of the 10,000 stars. We stood side by side when the Creator hung the heavens with new lights, and you said it was the most beautiful sight you'd ever behold. We promised that day, you and I, that we would serve him together, always. His voice trembled. Do not break that promise now. For one fraction of eternity, I wavered on the precipice. I could feel a part of me desperately wanting to yield, to collapse into Michael's arms, and weep and say I was wrong. But even as that softer impulse arose, an opposing fury roared within. The memory of kneeling before a mud-born creature, the sting of the eternal order's rebuke in front of the host. My pride, injured and raw, reasserted itself with a vengeance. My tears dried. My expression hardened once more. No, Michael, I said quietly, stepping back. I cannot. I will not. It's too late for me to turn back now. His outstretched hand fell. A terrible sorrow filled his face, mingled with resolve. Then you leave me no choice, he said, echoing the very words I had spoken to the eternal order. If you persist on this path, you will force my hand. I cannot follow you. I will not rebel against our Creator. I will stop you, if I must. I straightened, meeting his gaze with a challenging lift of my chin. I would expect nothing less of heaven's greatest warrior. My voice nearly broke, but I forced a cold smile. Do what you must, Michael, and so will I. For a moment we simply stared at one another, two brothers suddenly estranged. In his eyes I saw heartbreak and determination. In mine he must have seen only the reflection of the storm inside me. With a final whisper, "Please don't do this," Michael turned and left me standing alone in the corridor. That was the last time Michael and I spoke as friends. Alone under the arching skies of heaven, I wrestled with the flood of emotions within me. Sorrow, fury, excitement, fear, they all warred in my breast. But one thing was clear, the path back had closed behind me. I had made my choice. I would not, could not, return to the fold meekly. Not after everything ever done. The eternal order's warning rang in my ears, and Michael's parting words weighed on my heart. But my pride burned brighter, burning away any second thoughts. With heavy resolve, I departed that place and flew to the appointed rendezvous, where my confidants waited, anxious. In a secluded plaza of starlight and stone, they gathered as dusk in heaven's eternal day came, a subtle dimming that marked the time of reflection. As soon as they saw my face, they knew the petition had failed. He would not hear us, I announced bitterly. His mind is set, and he accuses us of pride for seeking our due. A ripple of anger and dismay moved through the group. I saw Azazel's jaw tighten, Belial's fists clench. One of the throne's angels, whose name was Thamiel, spoke with a hiss. Then it's done. We tried the peaceful road. Now we must decide, obey or stand against it. I lifted my hand and declared, I for one shall not bow to this decree. I will not bend my knee again to those made of clay. My voice echoed in the hollow, and I realized it carried a tone of command. If maintaining our honor means defiance, then so be it. I would rather fall than live in shame. There was a moment's pause as those present absorbed the finality of my words. Then Azazel stepped forward and knelt, shockingly, to me. Then I stand with you, Morning Star, he vowed, head bowed. Your cause is just. I will follow you, even into the dark. Quickly, others followed. Belial pressed a hand to his heart and nodded his allegiance. Simjaza, Leviathan, Ariel, her face mournful but resolved, and all the rest signaled their support one by one. They were fewer than I had hoped, but far more than I had feared. In their eyes shone devotion, no longer to the throne, but to me and to the ideal we shared. It should have felt exhilarating to gain such loyalty, and a part of me did swell with dark pride. Yet another part of me felt a pang seeing Azazel kneel. That gesture made something clear. In opposing the eternal order, I had set myself up as a new leader, whether I intended it or not. My friends were becoming my followers. Swallowing any hesitation, I accepted their fealty with a solemn nod. Then we move forward, I proclaimed. No more hiding in shadows. If heaven's king will not hear us, then heaven's armies shall. We will show that we will not be treated so lightly. Thus did our rebellion shift from whispered plotting to open resolve. No longer petitioners, we readied ourselves to become warriors against what we now deemed an unjust law. Our light would clash with light itself in a struggle for our pride and freedom. Chapter 5, War in Heaven. And so it came, the unthinkable war in heaven. The first woman now, ages later, the memory of that conflict shakes me. In a realm that had known only peace and unity, our rebellion tore the fabric of harmony asunder. It began with a call to arms among my followers. We gathered openly at the far reaches of heaven, a region beneath towering spires of white flame known as the Northern Pinnacles. This area lay distant from the throne's immediate glory, as if symbolically we assembled in the far shadows of heaven's light. I stood upon a crystalline dais and proclaimed our cause to all who would hear, that we sought liberation from a wrongful command, that we would not be slaves to a new order that diminished us. My voice carried across the shining plains, and angels flocked to listen. Most came out of shock and curiosity. A few came with hearts already leaning to my side. As I spoke, Azazel and Belial flanked me, their wings outstretched in a show of strength. Our banners, once the radiant sigils of our offices, now became symbols of our defiance, waved high by those who had pledged to me. We had no intention of hiding now. We wanted the host of heaven to know our stance. Reactions were swift. Many who heard me recoiled in dismay, some shouting for me to stop this madness. Others listened with troubled faces, uncertain, perhaps swayed by the righteousness I claimed. A surprising number began to move behind me, joining our rank. It was then I realized how deep the resentment had spread. Fully 1/3 of the assembled angels eventually gathered to my banner. They were warriors, artisans, luminaries, angels from every order who felt some spark of indignation akin to mine. Seeing our numbers swell bolstered my resolve further. With each new ally who flew to our side, my confidence grew that we could stand against the remaining host. But the loyal 2/3 were not idle. The first woman as our forces massed. The skies on the horizon glowed with approaching light, the army of the Archangel Michael. Word of our rebellion had reached every corner of heaven. Those faithful to the Creator's command rallied swiftly under Michael's leadership, forming a brilliant wall of wings and armor in opposition. We faced each other across a vast celestial plain. On one side, my followers arranged in proud ranks behind me, their once peaceful visages now hardened with resolve. On the other, Michael's loyalists, their faces etched with sorrow and determination. I saw familiar friends among them, Gabriel with a stern, sad look, Raphael weeping even as he drew a gleaming sword, Uriel with eyes aflame. They mourned that it had come to this, yet they stood firm. Michael stepped forward from the host, raising a hand in parley. I signaled my ranks to hold, and stepped forward as well, Azazel by my side. The silence between the assembled armies was heavy with destiny. Michael's voice, clear and resonant, echoed over the plain. Lucifer, my brother, do not do this. There is yet time to end this peacefully. He spoke with an anguished plea, loud enough for all to hear. Remember who you were, who you still can be. The eternal order has given you every chance to turn back. Please, spare heaven this tragedy. I lifted my chin, ensuring my voice carried just as far. There is no peace in servitude, Michael, I answered. I remember exactly who I was. The morning star, crowned in light and honor. That honor is what I seek to preserve. If defending our dignity is a tragedy, then so be it. We will not yield. A murmur rippled through both armies. Michael's expression grew stern, tears of frustration glinting. You leave us no choice then. He drew his sword, a magnificent blade of divine fire that shone like a fragment of the sun. At that signal, a great chorus rang out from the loyalist host. The sound of countless weapons manifesting from pure light, a dazzling arsenal ready to meet our defiance. Azazel leaned toward me and whispered, "It appears words will carry us no further, my lord." I nodded grimly and swept my hand through the air. In response, my followers drew their own ethereal blades and spears, weapons forged of concentrated will and fueled by our mounting anger. For the first time in history, heaven braced for the clash of arms against itself. With a final cry, Michael shouted, "For the glory of the Creator, stand fast," and I roared in answer, "For freedom and honor." The armies surged forward, and the skies of heaven erupted into chaos. The impossible was happening. Brothers and sisters who had laughed and sung together were now clashing in earnest. I soared into the fray, leading the charge. All around me rang the sound of colliding blades formed of light and purpose. Bursts of radiance flared as angel struck angel, and for the first time ever, pain and rage echoed through heaven's fields. Where once there had only been joyous song, now there were cries of struggle and anguish. I fought with fierce skill, my blade singing as it met one opponent after another. Angels fell back before me, not dead, for true death did not come easily to our kind, but wounded and stunned, their light flickering unsteadily. Each time an enemy faltered, one of my followers would bind them in chains of will, removing them from the battle. Likewise, when one of ours was struck down, others whisked them to the rear. We had not set out to destroy our kin, only to defeat and subdue. But in the heat of battle, control frayed, and I know some on both sides suffered grievously. Azazel engaged with a former friend turned foe, their swords sparking in midair as each tried to outmaneuver the other. Belial unleashed torrents of searing flame, countered by a holy shield raised by an opposing power. Waves of force rippled outward from each clash, shattering delicate crystal spires and wilting the once eternal flowers of the meadows. The very fabric of heaven quaked. It was as if the realm itself wept at the violence, the luminous skies dimming and trembling. At one point, through the roiling melee, I saw Gabriel confronting Azazel. Gabriel's face was streaked with golden tears as he parried Azazel's blows, pleading even as he fought, "Please, stop this madness, brother." Azazel responded with a snarl, pressing him hard. I lost sight of them as a blinding flash erupted to my left. Raphael clashing with Semjaza in a storm of light and wind. Suddenly a familiar figure emerged to bar my path. Michael himself. He glowed with an aura of divine authority. Wings outstretched grandly, that blazing sword in hand. All other combatants near us drew back instinctively, leaving a circle around the two of us. For a moment, neither of us moved. Over the din we locked eyes. "It doesn't have to be like this," Michael called out, even then giving me a chance. "The first woman now. Yield," I spat. "Would you yield your honor so easily, Michael? We fight for what we believe in, and we fight for him whom we believe in," he answered sorrowfully. Without further word he raised his sword in salute, and I answered in kind. Then with a shout we flew at each other. Our clash was like a supernova bursting. Sword met sword, light against light, and the shockwave of our strikes radiated outward, knocking nearby warriors from the sky. Michael was always the mightiest in combat. I knew this from sparring in friendlier days, but now I was fueled by wrath and desperation, a frenzy he had never seen in me. We traded blows that could sunder mountains. I felt the burn of his blade slice across my side, a line of searing agony. In return I struck his shoulder, cracking the golden armor he wore and drawing the first ichor of angelic blood. Heaven itself shuddered at our duel. The ground beneath, once firm and aglow, began to fissure as if an earthquake rolled through the spiritual realm. Above, the light dimmed from pearlescent day to a twilight hue. It was as if the concept of evening, unknown in heaven, was dragged into being by our strife. For the first time, shadowy darkness crept at the edges of the horizon. Our forces raged on around us, neither gaining clear advantage. Time in that conflict felt strange. It could have been moments or millennia. But eventually both sides withdrew slightly as a pall of exhaustion fell. Perhaps the eternal order, in his restraint, allowed us this day of battle to let our choices play out. As that first day of war in heaven ended, a kind of night fell over the warring plains, a dimming born of sorrow and smoke from the ruined glories of our home. The two armies separated, each tending to their wounded and regrouping. I retreated to a makeshift camp in the ruined courtyard of what had once been a grand amphitheater of praise. Its columns lay cracked and broken from the fighting, and the once melodious fountains were silent. There, Azazel, Belial, and my other captains gathered around me. Their faces bore wounds and worry. We had not anticipated the battle to be so fierce or the toll so heavy. Belial was first to break the silence, voice low, "Our losses." Semjaza shook his head. "Hard to say. Many are wounded, some gravely. A few," he hesitated. "A few did not reform after being struck down. They might reconstitute in time, or perhaps," he trailed off. We knew what he left unsaid. Perhaps they were utterly unmade. The thought chilled us. Death was a concept we had never grappled with. Azazel placed a hand on my arm. "We still have the larger share of our forces, Lucifer," he reported. "Though morale is uncertain, I understood The day's horror had shaken even the boldest of us. We knew it would not be easy, I said steadily. But look, we held our own. Michael did not defeat us. Not yet, Leviathan muttered, ever pragmatic. They will be prepared for us by next light. Michael is no fool. He turned his fiery eyes to the distance where the glow of the loyalist camp shimmered. If we simply clash again blade to blade, we could be locked in stalemate for eternity. Then we shan't fight them the same way, as Exile interjected. His voice hardened. We must unleash powers they would never expect us to dare. He looked to me, and I could already intuit his meaning. We had held back certain destructive capacities out of reverence for heaven itself, but now was anything off limits? I nodded slowly. This realm bore our glory. Now it will bear our struggle. We use every advantage. If that means turning heaven's own splendors into weapons, so be it. A few heads bowed at that, perhaps in sorrow, but none voiced disagreement. Belial pursed his lips, concern in his eyes. If we do that, we risk destroying much of what we hold dear. The palaces, the gardens. Those are just things. Semjaza snarled softly. What worth have they now if we are cast out of them regardless? I raised a hand to prevent bickering. Semjaza is right. Our priority is victory, not preserving architecture. I forced conviction into my tone, though a pang went through me recalling those beloved gardens that might soon burn. Ariel, cradling her injured arm, spoke up quietly. And what of the eternal order? If we push too far, will he intervene? At that, a hush fell. It was the unspoken dread. All eyes turned to me. I took a breath. Thus far, he has allowed us to fight our own battle, I replied. Perhaps he trusts his loyal legions to prevail, or perhaps he cannot simply unmake his gifts of free will, even in us. I knew I was grasping at rationales. The truth was, if the eternal order chose to smite us outright, nothing could prevent it. Yet he had not, maybe out of mercy or principle. We cannot live in fear of what he might do. We must act as though our fate is in our own hands now. That steeled them. I saw it in their faces. Acceptance that we would gamble everything on the morrow. Leviathan bared a fearsome grin. Then let us craft surprises for our dear brothers and sisters by dawn. Immediately plans were set in motion. A handful began gathering the ambient energy lingering from our clashes, shaping it into volatile orbs of force. Azazel and a few talented in creation took to weaving new weapons, great spears crackling with captured lightning, shields forged from congealed shadow to absorb the radiance of our foes. Belial and others whispered spells, long forbidden, songs of unbinding that could unravel the very fabric of certain heavenly constructs.
I moved among them, lending a hand or a word of encouragement where I could. In truth, the feverish preparation was a welcome distraction from the gnawing anxiety in my gut. If we lost tomorrow, but I shook off the thought, we would not lose. We dared not. Across the sundered plain, the Loyalists' camp glowed softly. Carried on the hot wind, we heard faint strains of a hymn. They were singing a gentle, sorrowful chorus, perhaps praying for us to see reason and surrender by morning. I felt a sting of emotion at that distant sound, but I hardened my heart. Their pity was misplaced. Our resolve was set. Finally, as those without need to rest continued crafting our war materials, I convened my captains one last time. Tomorrow we press the advantage, I told them, voice firm. We catch Michael off guard with every power and trick at our disposal. The aim is to break them swiftly. If we can scatter their ranks early, they may lose heart. Many of them do not truly wish to destroy us. They will falter if we hit hard. They all assented. In their eyes burned a fierce light, hope tempered by fury. For freedom, Azazel said, and held out his hand. One by one, we laid our hands atop his. a stack of oath-bound warriors in the gloom. For freedom, I echoed, meeting each of their gazes. For victory. With that, we allowed ourselves a brief respite. Some closed their eyes, entering a meditative rest. Others stood silent, watching the horizon for the first sign of renewed battle. I remained awake, perched on a fallen column, and staring into the darkness above, where faint flickers of our earlier battles still danced in the sky like distant heat lightning. I thought of heaven as it once was, peaceful, resplendent, and steeled myself with the knowledge that there was no way back to that world. The only path was forward, through whatever fire awaited.
Chapter 6. The Second Day of Battle. True to our resolve, when the twilight of that war-torn night gave way to a pale, ghostly dawn, we struck first. With a mighty cry, I led my host forward, catching Michael's ranks as they were still marshalling. Our assault was furious. Perhaps it was some grim mercy that in heaven we do not feel fatigue as mortals do. Our spirits were tireless even if our hearts were heavy. So we fought on with relentless vigor. In the lead, I clashed blades with one angel after another, carving a path through the enemy lines. My rebels followed, a wedge driving hard into Michael's army, splitting their formation. Azazel fought at my right hand, unleashing volleys of crackling dark fire that scattered clusters of opponents. On my left, Leviathan coiled his serpentine form in the sky, pouring forth a flood of burning light like a comet ploughing through the ranks. The loyalists, though valiant, reeled under our unanticipated ferocity. We had devised new strategies in the quiet hours. Our side no longer hesitated to wield the full destructive potential of our powers, even if it meant scarring heaven's beauty. Columns of celestial marble were toppled and hurled by our might. We tore clouds from the firmament and fashioned them into whips of storm lightning. I saw Belial high above, shattering the dome of the Grand Archive to rain its crystalline shards down upon our foes like a glittering storm. Shouts of alarm rose from Michael's line. They had never witnessed such reckless use of power, such willingness to unravel the very splendors of our realm as weapons. It gave us an edge. Inch by inch, they yielded ground. By mid-battle, it seemed victory might be within our grasp. I caught sight of Gabriel, who had been rallying the center of the loyalist host. He was struggling as our forces pressed in. Gathering my will, I channeled a great wave of force that slammed into him and those around, sending Gabriel tumbling from the skies. He crashed into the ruins below, stunned. A cry of dismay came from the loyal ranks at the sight of heaven's herald fallen. I glimpsed even Michael, in the midst of battle, falter and shout Gabriel's name in alarm. For an instant, the harmony and confidence of heaven's host teetered. If one of their mightiest could fall, what hope had the rest? I felt a surge of grim triumph. Could it be? Could we actually win? Encouraged, I drove my legions onward. The air was filled with the roar of battle, the crackling of energy, and the once sweet rivers of light now ran turbulent with the fallout of our powers. I fought my way toward Michael, determined to settle our struggle once and for all. He met me with fierce resolve. We exchanged fateful blows amidst a whirlwind of clashing armies. This time, I could sense weariness even in him. A bruise marred his cheek. One wing beat was slower, wounded from our prior duel perhaps. For the first time the mighty Michael seemed burdened. My heart exulted and mourned at once to see it. Yield now, Michael, I shouted over the thunder of conflict. The first woman you must see the justice of our cause is not so easily quelled. He parried my blade and struck back with a grimace. Justice? You blind yourself, Lucifer, he cried. Please stop before it's too late. But I pressed him hard. Our duel raged intensely. Around us, the rebel host punched through the loyalist lines, isolating pockets of the enemy. Cries went up as more and more of heaven's host were driven to defensive retreat. It seemed for one blazing moment that we would at last triumph by our own strength. The battle reached a fever pitch of destruction. I witnessed a horrifying sight, a loyal Dominion angel, and one of my rebel captains locked in a deadly embrace, their powers colliding in a brilliant burst. With a final scream, both simply disintegrated into motes of light and shadow, extinguished on the spot. It was unclear whether they were utterly destroyed or their beings cast far beyond heaven's bounds. A collective gasp rippled through nearby combatants at the absolute unmaking of two immortals. Such a thing had never happened before. The fabric of eternity itself was being scarred by our war. And then a new light exploded onto the battlefield, brighter than any I had ever seen, brighter even than the throne's radiance at its zenith. It seared across the darkened sky like a second dawn, arresting all combat. Both armies faltered, turning as one to behold its source. Chapter 7: The Fall from Grace. In that blinding radiance, all fight left the battlefield. Both friend and foe ceased, hovering or standing awestruck. I shielded my eyes against the sudden brilliance, and in my heart a tremor of dread unfurled. I knew what or who it was before my eyes could even behold him fully. From the midst of that light came forth the Eternal Order's champion, the one sometimes called the Chosen of the Eternal Order. He who had ever dwelt at the right hand of the Creator. Never before had he manifested in war, for there had never been war until now. He shone as if all the glory of the Eternal Order were concentrated in his form. A figure clad in white fire, crowned with the sun itself. A hush fell across the plains of heaven, broken only by the gentle flapping of countless wings, suddenly stilled in reverence or fear. Where he passed, the debris of our battle was swept away. Darkness fled, wounds were healed among the loyal. In his presence, our destructive fury seemed as nothing, childish tantrums, before the calm, omnipotent authority he exuded. Michael and his host knelt instantly, bowing their heads in relief and worship. My followers and I remained aloft, or standing, frozen in place by shock. Some of my braver warriors raised their weapons again uncertainly, but many quailed, their courage faltering in that divine presence. The Chosen regarded the devastation for a moment, his expression inscrutable. Sorrow, disappointment, and righteous anger all seemed to mingle in those eyes. When he spoke, it was with a voice like quiet thunder, resonating in every soul. Enough. That single word rolled across the expanse, and an invisible force struck us rebels like a great wind. I saw entire phalanxes of my followers knocked backward, sent tumbling head over heels. I myself staggered, wings faltering. Only with great effort did I keep my position, teeth clenched. He addressed us, the fallen host, with a sorrowful sternness. You who were once the lights of heaven, what have you done? His voice was both gentle and piercing, each word a sword of truth cutting to our cause. You raised your hand against your own brethren, against the order of creation. You sought to exalt yourselves above the will of the Eternal Order. A few of my rebels cried out in protest or pleas, but mostly we listened in stricken silence, our earlier bravado gone. I felt the weight of that voice keenly, pressing upon the pride that had buoyed me. Anger flared in me again, struggling against the shame creeping into my heart. I mustered my will and flew forward a few paces, facing this radiant champion. We sought only freedom, I called out, and though I meant to sound defiant, my voice cracked. Is it wrong to claim what was once our honored place? The Chosen's eyes fell upon me, and I felt laid bare, every dark corner of my intention seen through. He shook his head sadly. Lucifer, brilliant one, in your thirst for freedom, you forgot what you were, a creation of love. You have chained yourself to pride and called it liberty. I did what I had to, I replied, though my certainty wavered under his gaze. I would rather reign in my own right than serve as a lesser. My final admission rang out. There it was, the naked truth of my rebellion. I would not accept any place but first. At this, a tear like liquid light fell from the Chosen's eye. He raised a hand not in wrath, but in lament. You chose then your own path over heavens. There can be no place for you here, not as you are. He then lifted that mighty hand high. In it appeared a great horn or trumpet of purest gold, etched with runes of starfire. He put it to his lips and sounded a single note. The note was a paradox of music, beautiful and terrible, echoing the grief of what must be done, and the immutable justice behind it. It rang through every realm, a signal to the cosmos. In that sound was finality. Suddenly the foundations of heaven itself responded. Beneath our feet and wings, the very fabric of the celestial realm began to shift. At the edges of the high plain, where space gave way to the void beyond, great storm clouds gathered, swirling into a vortex. A howling wind rose, but it did not touch the loyal angels. It tore only at us, the rebels. I felt a pull, an inexorable tug toward that gathering storm at heaven's rim. I fought against it desperately, digging my heels into cloud and rock, beating my wings. All around me I heard the panicked cries of my followers as they too were caught in this divine tempest. One by one, I saw them lifted, flung towards the yawning darkness that had opened beyond the edge of heaven. It was as if a drain had opened in the universe, sucking everything unholy out. With a roar of sheer will, I managed to hold my ground for a moment, refusing to be cast out so easily. I glared at the blazing figure of the Chosen, and for an instant our eyes met again. In that instant, I thought I saw sorrow even greater than before, as though his heart broke anew seeing my stubbornness. He whispered, "Farewell, morning star," and then his outstretched hand turned palm down, as if making a gentle but firm gesture of dismissal. An overwhelming force, beyond anything I could hope to resist, seized me. My wings, so strong in flight, crumpled as the wind of judgment caught them. I was lifted off the ground as effortlessly as a feather. I felt myself hurtling backwards, weightless in the grip of that current. A chorus of wails surrounded me as my remaining comrades were likewise borne away. Heaven's shining threshold raced away from me. I saw, in those last glimpses, Michael kneeling with head bowed, tears upon his face. The victorious host, looking on with mixtures of relief and sorrow. The radiant form of the Chosen grew distant, a beacon of light we were rapidly leaving behind. Chapter 8. Into the Abyss. We were cast out, falling, tumbling into an abyss that seemed to have no end. A deafening silence replaced the trumpet's blare, and darkness closed around us as heaven's light receded above. Down and down we plummeted like a rain of meteors. At times I glimpsed my compatriots flailing in the void around me, a blur of wings and despair. Some cried out in terror or sorrow, their voices echoing strangely. I did not cry out. I was locked in a stupor of raging denial and profound grief. All sense of time and direction was lost. Were we falling for moments or ages? In that starless chasm there was no way to measure. Now and then, fiery energies crackled around us, remnants of heaven's wrath clinging to our forms as we were expelled through the outer gates of the cosmos. We passed through realms of twilight and chaos at the edges of creation. The sheer force of the fall scorched us. Our once beautiful wings were singed and torn by the turbulence. I felt the glory that once cloaked me begin to burn away, leaving me raw. Memories of what once was flooded my mind unbidden. The crystal sea, the morning hymns, the face of the Creator smiling upon me, Michael's laughter in the golden courtyards. Each recollection was like a dagger, reminding me of what I had lost, and mingled with them came venomous thoughts justifying my rebellion. I was wronged. I was humiliated. I did what I must. These thoughts warred with pangs of guilt and loss, a cacophony in my soul as I fell. At some point, a great heat pressed upon us. A dim red glow grew below, faint at first, but steadily brightening. The smell of sulfur and smoke wafted up. I realized we were approaching somewhere. Our descent was coming to its terminus. That glow became a burning horizon, and before I could even brace myself, I plunged into a sea of scorching fire. A shock of agony convulsed me. The fires were not ordinary. They licked at my very spirit, one by one, with splashes like comets hitting an ocean. My followers rained down into this fiery lake around me. Screams filled the air as we thrashed and struggled. The pain was immense, yet notably it did not consume us entirely. It was as though the fire was meant to punish, not to annihilate. I managed to fight my way to the surface, gasping though I needed no air. By sheer will, I dragged myself to the edge of that burning lake, onto solid ground. The heat of this realm pressed against me like a living thing, far beyond any warmth I had known. The air was acrid, thick with sulfur and ash, searing my lungs though an angel has no true need to breathe. A sky of murky red and black churned above, with neither sun nor stars to pierce its darkness. It was a realm seemingly abandoned by the concept of hope, an antithesis of heaven in every way. The terrain underfoot was jagged black stone, searing hot. I collapsed to my hands and knees upon it. All around the landscape flickered with lurid reds and ashen greys. Rivers of lava flowed in the distance, and the sky, or whatever passed for a sky in this nether realm, was a smoky vault shot through with embers. A heavy stillness hung in the air, broken only by the groans and cries of my fellow exiles, as they hauled themselves from the fiery depths onto the broken land. I rose unsteadily. The first womanly part of me ached. My luminous robes were gone, torn and charred into something colorless. I looked at my hands. Once they glowed with an inner light. Now they appeared pallid, even slightly translucent in the dim red gloom. I turned to glimpse my wings. The sight made my heart wrench. Those glorious wings were now darkened, feathers molted or singed. They had lost their former brilliance, the edges frayed like a burned parchment. It struck me with a dreadful clarity. The Lightbringer was now bathed in darkness. One by one my followers gathered around. Their appearances too had changed subtly, or not so subtly. Where once angelic beauty had shone, now their forms bore the marks of ruin and wrath. Some had glowing cracks upon their skin, or eyes that burned with infernal fire. Others trembled as they discovered new disfigurements, horns curling from their temples or spines along their wings, manifestations of the inner corruption that our fall had wrought. We had become fallen angels, a new and terrible thing in the cosmos, no longer the radiant children of heaven, but something altered, something lost. Azazel knelt on the ground, fists clenched, teeth bared in pain and rage. Belial had fallen to all fours, coughing out smoke but pushing himself upright, defiance still in his glare. Around us the lake of fire bubbled and roared, illuminating our disgrace. As I stood among them, panting though I had no need to breathe, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions from all anguish, fury, confusion, fear. All eyes turned to me, searching for guidance in this nightmare we now faced. I realized that even in defeat, they looked to me as their leader, perhaps now more than ever, for I was the reason they were here. And what of me? I closed my eyes and cast out my senses. Upward toward the heights from which we had fallen, I could no longer feel heaven. The connection, that golden tether of love and light that had always been in the backdrop of my soul, was severed. We were cut off, exiled utterly from the presence of the Creator. That realization hit me harder than any blow. An emptiness where divine warmth once dwelt. In its place, cold bitterness slithered in. For the first time I truly understood what we had done, and what it had cost. Lucifer, the morning star, was no more. I could sense it in the hollowness of my own aura. That name, that identity, belonged to an angel beloved of heaven. What was I now? In the eyes of those above, I was the adversary, the traitor, the fallen one. A new name crystallized in my mind, a bitter word that others would call me Satan, the adversary. It seared my consciousness even as I tried to reject it. Yet, part of me embraced it in defiance. If they would name me enemy, so be it. I would be the enemy, the ruler of my own fate, even in this desolation. Chapter 9. A new reign in darkness. The shock and despair in that infernal plain threatened to overwhelm us. But I knew that if we succumbed now to hopelessness, we would be truly lost. I forced myself to stand tall despite the pain, gathering what remained of my once majestic bearing. My followers, no, my people now, needed direction. They needed their leader. Azazel was the first to find his voice. He looked up at me, eyes burning both literally and figuratively. "What now, Lucifer?" he rasped, smoke curling from his lips with each word. Before I could answer, a broken sob came from our ranks. It was Ariel. She had landed nearby, and now crawled forward, her once serene face streaked with glowing tears. "What have we done?" she wailed softly. "We threw it all away, the light, his love." Her wings, singed like the rest of ours, drooped miserably. Perhaps if we beg forgiveness. Instantly, a rumble of dissent passed through the others. Some growled in anger at her words. Others looked momentarily tempted by the hope of absolution. My own heart clenched. A part of me longed for exactly that impossible pardon, but hearing it spoken aloud ignited my fury. I could not bear the thought of groveling back to the throne now, in chains and shame. My pride, battered but not broken, rose in defiance. "No," I snapped, my voice cutting through the crackle of the distant fire. "We shall not crawl back on our bellies. There is no way home for us now." Ariel recoiled at the harshness in my tone, fresh tears spilling. "But Lucifer, I never truly wanted," she choked out. I stepped forward and gently, though firmly, placed a hand on her shoulder. I softened my voice, trying to mask my own turmoil. "Ariel, listen. That door is closed. Think of what was said," the judgment pronounced. "We cannot return. They would never trust us at their backs. And would you truly want to wear the chains of a traitor at heaven's gate?" She shook her head, sobbing quietly. "Our only path is forward, not back," I said, loud enough for all to hear. "Here, in this world we find ourselves in, we will make something new. We will forge meaning from our loss." Azazel pushed himself to his feet, standing battered but proud. "Yes," he shouted, "our own fate. Belial, still kneeling, pounded a fist on the ground in agreement. Others, one after another, let out cries of approval, of shared rage and newfound determination. Now, I declared, my voice echoing against the cavernous sky of this new realm, we rise again, we make this place our own. Many looked at me in surprise. Some had expected me to wail or lament. Others had feared I might abandon hope. But as they heard my words, I saw a spark ignite in those defeated eyes. Heaven is lost to us, I continued, but we are not lost to ourselves. We still have our wills, our minds, our strength. This realm, barren and hellish though it may seem, shall be our kingdom. We will create our own light here in the dark. A low murmur rippled through the crowd of fallen angels. They straightened, drawing around me more closely. In their faces I saw the flicker of purpose returning. Emboldened, I raised my voice louder, letting it carry across the fiery lake and jagged rocks. We owe the eternal order nothing now. He cast us out, denied us our rightful place. Very well, in this realm we hold dominion. No one shall expel us from here. We are free from his commands, free to shape our own fate. Azazal pushed himself to his feet. Free to shape our fate, he echoed fiercely. Belial and others growled in agreement. We may have fallen, I cried, but we will rise as kings of this world beneath. Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven's tyranny. The sentiment, once unthinkable, now rang like music to those gathered. A cheer, a strange, fierce cheer, erupted. It was the sound of defiance refusing to be extinguished. Amid that clamour, I caught sight of Ari. She had risen from her despairing crouch, a new hard light in her eyes as she joined the others in acclaim. Her tears were dried. In their place, a fierce resolve shone. Seeing that transformation in one who had nearly given up steeled my own heart. Even further, in that moment, amid the erupted shouts and the roar of distant thunder in this underworld, something shifted within me. The anguish and shame were still there, but I cloaked them in the mantle of leadership and pride. They needed me strong, and so strong I became, outwardly at least. Inside, a dull ache throbbed, the last echo of the love and light I once knew. I smothered it with thoughts of vengeance and ambition. My eyes roamed the fiery landscape, and I imagined what we could build here. A grand city, perhaps, forged from brimstone and infernal fire, where we would rule. Our own palaces, our own council, a twisted mirror of the heaven we left behind. If our natures were now deemed twisted, then we would make art of that very twist, own it fully. Already, my followers began to act. Spurred by my words, some took to the air, such as it was in hell, to survey our new domain. Their once graceful flight, now a bit ragged but serviceable. Others tested their powers, finding them altered but not gone, wreathing their hands in flame or raising up chunks of black rock with their minds. If the Creator meant this as a prison, we would not sit idle in chains. We would assert our will even here. I walked a few paces away from the throng, finding a slight rise of craggy ground that overlooked the assembly. There I found a jagged outcrop that jutted upward like a throne-shaped boulder. Climbing it, I settled myself upon it, wings spread to balance me. It was crude, but it served as a symbol. Lucifer, enthroned in hell. Azazel approached and knelt once more, not out of weakness this time, but fealty. "Hail Lucifer," he proclaimed, voice resonant, king of this realm. Others took up the cry, "Hail Lucifer!" Their voices echoed, carrying both reverence and wrath. In their eyes I saw devotion and dependence. I was all they had now, their chosen king in darkness. King, the title was both grim and gratifying. I allowed myself a faint smile, raising one hand in acknowledgement of their allegiance. "My friends," I said softly, "my loyal stars that chose to fall with me, we will turn this defeat into triumph yet. Our war with heaven is over, but the war for our own destiny has just begun. We shall never forget what was taken from us. And though we are exiled from the light, we carry our own fire now." Their answering roars left no doubt. They would follow me, come what may, even unto the end of time. Thus in the heart of that desolation, a new kingdom was born, a kingdom not of light, but of shadow and flame, where we who would not serve would reign. As the tumult subsided and my followers moved to undertake various tasks, I remained seated on that rocky throne, gazing into the infernal distance. Volcanoes spewed rivers of molten rock that flowed like veins of blood through the dark plain. The sullen light of this realm cast long, flickering shadows. It was terrifying and majestic in its own way, and it was ours. A silence fell around me for a brief moment. In that silence, I allowed myself one last indulgence of memory. High above, beyond reach, beyond sight, lay heaven. I wondered, would any there mourn me truly, or had I become a byword for evil already in their songs? Perhaps Michael was even now recounting my fall with lament to those who remain. My heart twinged with something like sorrow, but I hardened it. I would not let longing weaken me. What was done was done. The Lucifer that had basked in heaven's light was gone. I was someone else now, Lucifer, the fallen, Satan, the adversary, king of the fallen angels. I embraced that identity fully, letting it fuse with my very being. And in that acceptance, I found a grim sort of peace. Not the gentle peace of heaven, no, a colder, sharper peace that comes with resolution. I would remain true to myself and my choice. I would never again bow or beg. If that meant an eternity of darkness, then so be it. I lifted my gaze upward one last time, whispering a silent vow into the void between our realm and the world above. I am Lucifer, and I will never submit. Thus ended the war in heaven and began my reign in hell. The first chapter of my story closed in flames and shadows. I sit here now in this grim kingdom, forever a monarch of my own making, a ruler of those who chose freedom over servitude. We bear the scars of what once was, and we nurture the embers of what will yet. Chapter 10. Epilogue. Countless ages have passed since those fateful events. Here in the depths of my shadowy kingdom, time flows strangely, yet I have not been idle. My rebellion took on new forms after the Great War ended. Though cast down, I found ways to continue opposing the Creator's designs. Subtly, invisibly, but persistently. From our infernal realm we turned our gaze to earth, that world of mortals which had catalyzed my pride. If we could not overthrow heaven, perhaps we could spoil the eternal order's new delight. It was not long after our fall that I saw an opportunity. In the guise of a cunning serpent, I entered the hallowed garden where the first man and the first woman dwelt in innocent obedience. With whispered words of temptation, I ignited a rebellion in their hearts, not unlike the one that had consumed mine. They tasted the forbidden fruit of knowledge, and as we watched hidden among the trees, the Creator's voice rang with sorrow and judgment upon them. My fallen brethren and I felt a dark satisfaction, for we had struck a blow, however small, against the order we could no longer share. The first man and the first woman were cast out of Eden, exiled into a world of toil and pain. In their downfall, I saw a grim mirror of our own, and yet I felt no regret, only a cold vindication. If I could not dwell in paradise, why should they? Thus began a new front in my war against heaven. Not a direct confrontation of angelic armies, but a subtle corruption of his cherished creation. Through the ages of the world I, and my demon lords, for so my followers came to be called, moved like shadows in the affairs of mortal. We whispered in the dreams of kings, fanned the flames of envy and pride in countless hearts, sowed lies and discord. One empire's tyrant, long ago, awoke from sleep with newfound lust for expansion that I had planted in his mind, leading to a war that engulfed nations. A proud priest in another age claimed a revelation that was in truth my subtle poison, and it spread cruelty in the guise of piety. We turned humanity away from their Maker wherever we could. Many names did mortals give me: Satan, the adversary, devil, the slanderer, tempter, prince of darkness. By whatever name they came to fear the unseen hand that led them astray. Stories of my exploits filtered up in the smoke of their sacrifices and the ink of their scripture. How much of those tales is true and how much imagined, even I cannot say, for human minds often create devils enough on their own. But certainly I walked among them in spirit, delighting in each soul that chose selfishness or cruelty, for in their fall I tasted a vindication of my own choice. Mortals have always tried to give shape to the darkness that influences them. Some picture me with horns, cloven hooves, and a monstrous grin. Others envision a great red dragon or a serpent coiled around the world. They paint images of a fallen angel with tattered wings and eyes full of hatred. In truth, I can wear any face that suits my aims, or none at all. If they saw me as I truly am, would they recognize me, the once radiant archangel, now marred by sorrow and scorn? Perhaps it is easier for them to hate a caricature of evil than to understand the tragic reality, so I do not begrudge them their fantasies. I have become, in their collective imagination, the embodiment of all sin and temptation. It is a role I play to the hilt, though ironically it was born from their need to explain the darkness within themselves. They even penned laments of my downfall. "How you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning," wrote one of their prophets, unwittingly echoing the chorus of my former brethren on the day I fell. In the mortal mind I became at once a cautionary figure and the ultimate antagonist in their spiritual drama. Yet in quieter moments I sometimes wander the silent halls of my dark palace and reflect. I have built a throne of obsidian and brimstone. I have a crown wrought from the bones of fallen stars. In the years following our banishment, we shaped this desolate realm to suit our purpose. My greatest architects among the fallen raised a fearsome citadel at the realm's center, a city of demons born from the ashes. We called it Pandemonium, all demons in one tongue, for it housed the multitudes of our kind. Black iron spires twist up from molten foundations, and walls carved from obsidian mountains ring our infernal capital. The grand hall of my palace could rival the courts of heaven in scale, though its beauty is of a darker sort, lit by lakes of fire and adorned with grotesque statues that mock the angels we once were. Here I hold council with my most trusted lieutenants, devising ways to extend our influence. Each of the mighty fallen took domains in this new world. Azazel commands legions that oversee the forging of infernal weapons and engines in the volcanic forges. Belial governs the courts of falsehood, inspiring lies and propaganda that seep into mortal mind. Leviathan rules the fiery seas and the creatures that lurk within them, a dread tyrant of the sulfur oceans. The first woman, Ariel, after overcoming her initial despair, became the matron of certain circles of this hell, twisting her former wisdom into cunning deceits to lead souls astray. Thus we established our own infernal order, a dark mirror of the hierarchy we once served, with me as supreme ruler. My dominion in hell is absolute, and my influence on earth, though subtle, is vast. One might say I achieved the very desire that sparked my rebellion, to rule my own realm, beholden to none, and still there is an emptiness that lingers at the edge of my being, a faint echo of the light and love I once knew. I smother it with fury when it arises, but it never fully goes away. In the deepest night here, if one can call the perpetual half-glow of hell night, I have caught myself remembering a melody from heaven, or the way dawn felt on the crystal sea. In those moments, a single tear of flame might trace down my cheek before I banish the memory with a snarl. Do I regret my choice? It is a question I crush whenever it surfaces. To dwell on what might have been serves no purpose but to weaken my resolve. Yet in the deepest sanctuary of my thoughts, I sometimes imagine an alternate fate, one where I swallowed my pride and remained the morning star of heaven. Would I be joyous and fulfilled now, basking still in the Creator's love? Or would that pride have eventually found another outlet to break me? The answers elude me, lost to the void of possibilities that can never be. I tell myself it is better not to wonder, and so I do not, at least not for long. Such sentiment is weakness. I remind myself sharply. I chose freedom, and I will never return to servitude. Better to reign in hell in truth, than serve in heaven. These are the words I live by, carved into the very foundation of my being. My loyal followers, now feared demons of the pit, look to me for unyielding strength, so I show them only resolve and wrath, never the wistful longing that sometimes haunts my private thoughts. They must never see it, or they might lose heart. They too remember heaven in their own ways, but they take solace in my leadership and the purpose I provide. I am their morning star still, ironically, a guiding light, albeit a fallen one, leading them through the darkness we have chosen. I think often of Michael. In my bitterness I imagine him content and honored in heaven, the bright champion who never faltered. I wonder if he reminisces about me ever, the brother who went astray. Perhaps he tries to forget that I was once his friend. Certainly no word has ever reached me from on high. In all the long years since my exile, no message or plea has ever passed between heaven and hell. Not once has a herald descended to offer terms, nor could my pride allow me to seek any. The silence is its own answer. We dwell in two separate worlds now, as estranged as east from west. Perhaps it's easier for them all if I am just a monster in their eyes, devoid of any virtues I once had. Indeed, across the cosmos my name is now synonymous with evil. If that is the price of my rebellion, so be it. I wear that reputation like armor. And what of the eternal order? Did my fall wound his heart as deeply as it wounded ours? In my pride I used to think he cast us aside lightly. But sometimes I recall the sorrow in his voice and in the eyes of his chosen on that day of judgment. The first woman as I was hurled down, I sensed grief in heaven. It's easier to assume he does not miss us, that he simply replaced our company with that of obedient mortals and loyal angels. The alternative thought, that he still loves the ones who turned against him, is too painful, too puzzling to entertain. So I harden my heart with indignation. We were wronged, I tell myself. He forced our hand. These assertions fuel my ongoing resistance and drown out any lingering doubts. My war against heaven continues, though not with open arms on a battlefield of cloud and light. It persists in every choice for hate over love, chaos over order. In the mortal realm, I fight it in the shadows, a guerrilla war of the soul. and I wait for whatever end the eternal order has written. There are whispers among some of my kind of a final battle yet to come, a last judgment when all scores might be settled. The seers among heaven's host envision me as a great red dragon to be bound in chains and cast into an abyss at the end of days, a fate they deem just. Whether that is literal truth or simply a metaphor for the ultimate defeat of evil, I cannot say. Such prophecies do not intimidate me. If anything, they strengthen my resolve to defy until the very end. If that day comes, I intend to meet it as proudly unbowed as I have lived in exile. Perhaps victory will elude me, as it did before, but I will never give the Creator the satisfaction of my surrender. Until then, I remain what I have become. I am Lucifer, the once radiant morning star, now the ruler of darkness. I am the fallen archangel, the first to rebel, and the first to be cast out. I wear the scars of that war, and the weight of millennia of defiance. And though the light of heaven is but a memory carved in the recesses of my being, the fire of my will burns ever on. I have shared this story so that you may understand the soul behind the name so often feared. Mine is a cautionary tale, yes, but also a testament to the unyielding spirit for good or ill. This is how the fall is remembered by the one who fell, not as law, but as loss. Take from it what wisdom you will. And now, mortal listener, if it pleases you, rest. Let my tale be a distant thunder that lulls you deeper into the night. Know that this has been but a story, a tapestry of myth and imagination woven for your ear. May your dreams be peaceful and your heart untroubled, for the dawn always follows even the longest night. All dark nights end, and morning's light will come gently for you. So breathe softly, let your mind drift among the stars, and release any lingering worries. Peace and comfort are yours in this moment. Sleep and be at rest until a new day dawns. If this tale kept you company tonight, don't forget to subscribe so the next story finds you easily wherever the night meets you. Sleep deeply, and may the mountains and the sea watch over your dreams.